Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk about the planning packet. As you can see, planning packet right there. We have a couple different versions of the planning packet depending on what class you're in, but there are really only a few differences between the two. So I'm going to talk to you about what this planning packet is, how it helps you, and what we expect from each page. All right, so first things first, you have your first page. This is the page for throwing down every idea that your brain ever has before you toss it into your mental garbage disposal. This is a place to throw down everything. You want this as full as possible. So first things first, you do have your name, your period, and your due date up at the top. Very important. We don't want to mix up yours with someone else's. And over here, I wrote a couple little things that might help you figure out some things. So brainstorming. This is where you're just going to list as many ideas as possible. Literally anything that goes through your brain, throw into this little hexagon right there. It could be colors. It could be ideas of what you want to use. It could be ideas of different meanings or like visual things that goes through your brain. Like you can sketch them in here, you can write them in here, but you want it as full as possible. Do not delete any ideas from in here. Do not fail to write down an idea in here unless you happen to know that it's not school appropriate. This is not the place for paring down your ideas. It's for dumping as many ideas as possible. Themes and emotions. You'd probably come to this one second, maybe first if this one's a little bit more clear to you than this one. And in here, you're going to, again, be dumping down lots of ideas. You might be basing them on what you have up in this first one, but this one says, what do you want to say or feel? So this is where you're going to talk more about what you want this artwork to mean or to be referencing or to feel like to your audience. So do you want them to feel disheartened? Do you want them to feel nostalgic? Do you want to talk about your relationship with your parents? Do you want to talk about something that happened when you were 6? Do you want to sing the praises of the person that you're currently dating? What themes or emotions are you really wanting to pull forward? And again, you can have as many as you want in here. There is no reason not to include them. If it's something that you think you could make an artwork around or have someone feel from an artwork, toss it in the box. It is for putting things down. Sources list. It says, what references will you need? Sources are going to be anything that you reference. That's going to be photographs, sketches, drawings. If there is a particular artist that inspires you, you might think about looking up some of their images. Think of it like a Pinterest board or a dream board, anything that you're going to need to create this artwork. These references, especially for contest pieces, oftentimes need to be of your own creation, which is to say you need to be the one to make it, or it needs to be made by someone very, very close to you. Depending on the contest, either is usually fine. But the more things that you can personally make yourself, be it a sketch from your imagination or a photograph of a friend showing you how to do a pose of some kind, you want to try your best to have it be something that you create yourself. All right, so that's the first page, dumping ground of ideas and plans and thoughts. Let's look at the next page. This is your place for really starting to pare down your ideas. So you've had your entire brain just shuffled, and you have like 20 or 30 thoughts in your brain all at once. This will really help you start to pare down. So you want to start thinking more about a specific artwork that you would like, the thing that is most interesting or the thing that you can say the most about, is what you want to start thinking about in this particular page. So theme planning, use the bubble map to write emotions, themes, and possible subject matter for your project. So now maybe I've gone from, oh, I want to do something nostalgic and happy and complex and about my family. And instead of having all of those different things going through my brain, I will pare down here. So instead of just saying, I'm going to do something about my family, I'm going to do something about my sister and our hobbies, and I'm gonna have our favorite colors, and I want to have maybe these referenced things that we did as children together. Maybe we had some kind of like favorite food that we shared. Maybe there was like some kind of traumatic experience. I'm paring down to something more specific. And from here, I can really start to gel together what my final product will end up looking like. This is not a final draft. So don't be freaked out if it changes later on. This is helping you pare it down. And down here at the bottom, we have write your theme as a complete sentence. A theme is generally going to be the emotion or the feeling that you want. Again, all of this stuff can still change, especially if it's something more physical, like I want to build something out of a dollhouse. That can change later on still really easily without changing your theme whatsoever. So a basic sentence for you to be working from here is one that I've used a lot. It helps a lot. But again, it's a first draft, so if it needs to change, it can. It says, my artwork of, and then there's a fill in the blank, subject matter. That is, what is this going to actually be a picture of? Is it going to be a drawing of a car? Is it going to be a drawing of a sunset? Is it going to be a sculpture of a teddy bear? What is this actually going to be picturing or depicting? My artwork of depiction shows emotion and or meaning. Emotion and or meaning. So what do you want this to say? By, and then some fill in the blank. So my artwork of a doll shows nostalgia by depicting a doll that my sister and I had as children, for example, throwing that down really fast. So again, this page is to help you start paring down your ideas and really narrowing in on what you actually want this to be about. Remember, all of this is mutable. You can change it later on. You don't want it to morph outside of being the same project, but you might have to go at it a different angle, and that's okay. This is going to be, for most people, the most difficult page. This is where you're finding artist inspiration. And if you say, I don't have an artist inspiration, I just draw from my own imagination, you have eyeballs, and therefore you have artistic inspiration. There is no way to avoid it. Absolutely none. All right, so you have three types of artists that you can find. You can find a contemporary artist, or a community artist, or an historical artist. And 90% of the time, especially if you're in Art 1, your immediate go-to is to name any artist that you know the name of. Da Vinci, or Dali, or maybe if you're like, I don't know, slightly more like into the art thing, maybe Rubin or something. Dali, who knows? Those are historical artists. They're people from history. They're famous for a reason. They're really good at what they did. But most of the time, they're not really going to be able to help you in this section. This section says, what about this artist's work inspires you? Now, if this were a thing where it's just any artist that inspires you, any artist would really do. But in this particular case, we want to find an artist whose artworks mirror your own in some way, shape, or form. You can come at this from two directions. You can say, I want their meaning to be the same as mine, but we use completely different materials. Or maybe you want the materials to be the same as yours, but the meaning is different. Or maybe it's just overall very similar. Any of those things are fine. And honestly, most of the time, a contemporary artist will be much closer to what you are creating than an historical artist. By the by, a community artist is one who kind of lives in your area. So maybe you have one of those. I've got a few things that I can show you that might help out with that. All right, so as for finding an artist that you can use for your artist inspiration page, again, historical is what usually comes to mind. It's not what usually works. Contemporary artist is any artist who's alive and living. Community is an artist that kind of lives near you. So maybe someone that you personally know. If someone in your family is an artist, for example, that would be a community artist. So let's look at this right here. This is a blog called This is Colossal. So if you go to thisiscolossal.com, you can kind of see that right there. I usually just search up in Google, This is Colossal, and it's like the first thing up there. This is an art blog, and they have hundreds and hundreds of articles about different artists who are currently working and what they're working on. They have things that are digital. They have various media. They have ceramics. They have printmaking. They have installation work, sculptures and 2D things, drawings, and all sorts of things from around the world. So this is probably your number one place that I know of to find a current working artist. And what they have right over here in this corner is a search bar. So for example, if I want to maybe bedazzle a jacket that I owned when I was a child, and I want to look up artists that do things like bedazzling, I can literally search up bedazzled and hit search. And look at that. Shimmering collages and installations by Sarah Shaquille bring bedazzled glamour to everyday scenes. And I can go and I can click into this article, and I can usually find tons of pictures of this artist's work, or sometimes a video or an interview. And I can read a little bit about what this artist's artwork is about, what they tend to focus their themes on, and if it matches mine, or if it relates to me, or if it's just a technique that I might want to try. I can use this artist as an inspiration artist, and it is much more meaningful than whatever historical artist you can pull out of your brain, because it will just relate to my artworks more. And that's something that you would be putting down onto this page. You would circle one of these three, in this case contemporary. I'd put Sarah Shaquille or whoever it happens to be. And how does this artist's work inspire me? I'm going to be bedazzling a jacket to represent fashion choices as a preteen in northern Texas, and she bedazzles all sorts of Americana, like a hamburger, to talk about glamour of the everyday. Similar concepts, shocker. And it works really, really well. There are certain contests where this page is very, very important. And so even though it's a difficult page sometimes to do, I promise you it's not as hard as you think. You have Google at your disposal. Abuse and use her. Instagram artists and Facebook artists generally are also okay. They would count in that contemporary art category, or possibly community if it happens to be someone who lives near you or in your town. And so it's much easier to find working artists nowadays than it used to be. All right. The next page is probably the easiest page. This is your aesthetic choices page, and there's a couple different versions of this based on the packet you got. This one right here is for 3D artworks. So it has things like clay, oil clay, porcelain, cardboard, wood, fiber, found objects, etc. in its materials. Materials are so this would refer to whatever materials you're using to create your artwork. Genre, this is more like a flavor that you're doing. So ceramics would be things that are mostly based in clay. Sculpture would be any other 3D creation that you create. And installation is a massive, takes up a whole room sculpture situation. Supports are going to be something that we expect in 3D. What kind of support does it need in order to stand up on its own so it doesn't fall over? Or if there's anything in particular that you might need to purchase that we might not have in the room. However, it does differ from the 2D aesthetic choices page. This one's a little bit harder to read, but it's going to have, for 2D things, you're going to have things like your surface. What are you actually creating your artwork on? Is it going to be paper? Is it going to be canvas? Is it going to be wood or something else? Genres are painting, drawing, printing, or collage, or you could have a combination of those things. And media, again, is what you're creating your artwork out of, materials style, graphite, pen and ink, acrylic, watercolor. Is there an other? Maybe you're finger painting with food. That would sit in there. And then mixed media down here at the very bottom is if you're doing a combination of those things. So for here, you'd want to circle out your ideas of what you're going to create. Again, this is mutable to a point, so don't feel like you're completely married to these, but you should have a pretty solid idea of what you're going to be creating or making at this point in the packet. So you should have a pretty solid idea of what you're going to need here. All right, last page is our action plan. Your action plan talks about what are you actually doing. This is how you're going to help yourself plan. So your teacher will tell you about your due dates, if there's any half checkpoints, if there's a quarter checkpoint, if there's a rough draft due date, if there's a when the final draft due date is, when this planning packet is due, for example. All of those should go into this due dates category. You should have an idea of when those are going to be due. This next one is very important. It's actionable steps. What specific steps are you taking in order to reach your end goal? So an actionable step is make 4 sketches. An actionable step is find or create 3 resource images. An actionable step is do 2 experiments to find out how to color best whenever you have something that's not colored. You have an actionable step. Experiment with glues for collages. Should I use Mod Podge or white glue to glue things down? For example, actionable step. Actually draw like the head versus this versus that. Actionable steps are things you can physically do, checkpoints that you can make for yourself in getting your entire artwork done. This one is something that is a little bit difficult to learn how to break down on occasion, but is incredibly helpful. It helps keep you on track. There comes a point in your art making journey where inspiration will fail you. When inspiration fails you, doing something or just relying on what skills you have can get you through a lot of rough spots.